This is Gemara Baba Kamo Daf Kof Yod Ches B'Siyato Dishmaya. The last final two daf of this long and incredible Masechta. But in truth, we're not done. It used to be all three Babas, Baba Kamo, Baba Mesiya, Baba Basra, was one Masechta, so we can view it as we finished the first third, or we can view it like we finished, so it gives us a new fresh kite. But either way, we're holding on Kof Yedzayin Amid Beis. We began the Gemara. The Gemara is discussing a case of someone who stole a field from his friend, and then Shatva Nahar, a river came and wiped away the field. Said the Braisa, a machlekes Rav Eliezer of the Chachamim, would you have to give another field? Rav Eliezer said yes, and the Chachamim said no, you could say Arish al Chalafanecha. We began in the Gemara that taught us what exactly is this machlekes in Rav Eliezer and the Chachamim? The Gemara said, "B'mayka mifki," and the Gemara said, "Rav Eliezer dar shiboi miuti v'riboi," whereas the Chachamim don't darshin riboi, miot, and riboi, and rather the Chachamim darshin klali, prati, uklali. So let's pick it up from the words of the Chachamim. 7 lines to the bottom. First word line is shtarais. V'rabbanan darshi klali uprati. V'kichesh klal b'mikadem prat. Omikol chazer v'klal. Klal uprata klali atadon klina prat. Ma prat avar metaltal v'gufa imamoin. Avkod avar metaltal v'gufa imamoin. Yotzu karkois. She'ein metaltal in yotzu avaz shiksh like a kois. Yotzu shtarais avi shemetaltal hein. Avi shemetaltal neshtar, even though it is movable. Ein gufay mamoin. Asks, that's really where we stopped in the middle. Ask the Gemara ve'hatanya. Ask the Gemara, what about the Brisa that teaches 3 lines from the bottom? Someone steals a cow in a river, washes over. Chayev lahamid loy para. Divri Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer again says, you got to give another cow. So ask the Gemara, Hasam b'mayka mifli. What is the machlekes? Because if you're going to tell me that the previous machlekes is centered around the fact that it was a sadeh, but seemingly they have the exact same machlekes with regard to a para. So b'mayka mifli. On the last line of Kuf Yitzayin Mabez, Amar Papa Hasam b'mayaskinan, Gonche Gazal Sadeh Mechaveiroi. The case of the Brisa that said they stole a para, you know what the case really was? They stole a para mechaveira, a sada, from their friend. V'haisa, and there was as we turn over to Kuf Yechesam and Aleph, a para revutza boy. There was a cow inside the field. And then what happened? V'shatva inar, Rav Eliezer l'taimei, v'Rabbanan l'taimei. Says the Gemara that in reality it's exactly the same case. They're both cases of Gazal Sadeh, just one had to count it, one did not. And therefore, for all intents and purposes, it's the exact same machlekes. We begin with the next Mishnah on the top of Kuf Yiches Amid Aleph. Ha goizel es chaveiroi. Someone steals from a friend, or he borrowed from his friend. Or he gave it to him, gave him an item as a bikadon, as a deposit for safekeeping. B'yishav, if it's in a settled area, lo yachzer loy. He doesn't have to return it to the old. B'yishav lo yachzer b'midbar. If you borrowed in the yishav, you cannot return it when you're in the midbar, the desert. Amanas lotzes midbar. But if you borrow the money on condition to go to the midbar, the desert, then yachzol b'midbar, you can even return it there. So our Mishnah now gets involved in at what level the hayshava, the returning of the item, has to be case, or I should say location specific. Now, the case in the Sefer of the Mishnah, which said, Amanas, Latis Midbar, Rashi, really foreshadowing the Gemara, points out that what's going on over here, we think, is that he says, I want to borrow the money to go to the midbar, and I'm going to pay you in the midbar. Which, of course, thereby brings in the question, so what's the chiddush? He said explicitly that's what he wants to do. So says the Gemara, let's see the Gemara. I'll ask you a contradiction. A malva, one who borrows something, could pay back. Incorrect. A milva, referring to the loan, you can pay back wherever you want. Aveda upikadain, ein mishtalmin ella bimit kaiman. So what do we see? We see when it comes to a milva, seemingly you could pay it back with chol makam. Amar Rabbi Achi Kamar milva nitna litvaya litava b'chol makam. Payment can be demanded anywhere, but b'chol makam. But aveda upikadain leinin litava elam kaman. Meaning we're talking about the taviyah. When and where can he ask back for the money? That's when it can be b'chol makam by a milva, whereas when it comes to Naveda and Abikadin, it has to only be Pimik Koiman. We go to the next case. I'm going to ask Midbar asking Marb Shita. As we just pointed out, if it's saying the case in which that he says explicitly, I want to pay back in the Midbar, then of course he could. Explains the Gemara, this kaddish should be by you. Then another midbar nafkinik. I'm going to the midbar. Varm the you another midbar. Nami be another midbar. I'm also going to the midbar. If you want, I can return it back to you there. So it's not that he spoke out, I'm borrowing it on condition to return it back in the midbar. Case is where the person about the shaymer says, I'm also going there and I'm going to return it to you there. And the malva did not have a problem. The Baal Bikadan did not have a problem. Continue with the second Mishnah of Kufri Chesam and Aleph. Ha'imr l'chaver Gazalti. If someone says, friend, Gazalti, I stole from you. Or he says, Elvi son, you lent me money. If Kadati Yatzal, you gave it because by me. Ve'eni idea, and I don't know. V'chzir l'cha. I can't recall. Did I pay you back? Im lo ychzir l'cha. Lacha is chayiv l'sham yasvei back. If he says, I don't remember if I stole from you. I don't remember im helvisani. Or I don't remember if you lent me money. Or im ifikadati. Or I don't know whether you gave me a pikadain. In all those cases where he's not certain, rather it's more of a shemo, we would call it, than pater milashalim. So again, the Reisha, he knows for sure. The Seifa, he is not for sure. It says the Gemara, Itmar. Famous Gemara, we had this thing. Subes will have it soon above Mitziyah. Someone says Yomi 100. I don't know. Tzmach like yes. Rav Yehuda, Rav Yudam, Rav Chayiv, Rav Nachman, Rav Yechon, Amri Bater. And the Gemara explains. Rav Yudam, Rav Chayiv, why Bari Vishem? Of course, Bari Adav, Rachvi Zagamar. No, it's true, Bari Adav, but Ukimani B'chesed Marei. We established the money in the possession of the owner, and therefore he does not have to pay back. Tanam, we learned in a Mishnah. I don't know. Milvisani Potter Hechidam. Elim Lokatavle, Reshinami Lokatavle. He didn't ask for it. Amaychayiv Elika Tikatavale. Tani Seifa, Potter Milashalim. So what's going on over here? It says the Gemara, Lailam Delokatavle. Reisha Babalat says he never was Taveim. Comes on his own good accord. He wants to make good. That's the Chiv Shamayim. It's Marnami Am Rechiv Rabbam Rav Yechlam the Chaver. Manali Bial Chavalei Meini Adea Chayiv Babalat says he Shamayim. In a case of Shamayim, therefore that's when there's going to be a Chiv. And we continue with another Mishnah. A 3-amud Mishnah says the Gemara. Someone steals a lamb from the flock, and then he just puts it back into the flock, and he never told the owner he stole it, never told the owner he put it back. Umeis. And then that sheep died, or nignav, or was stolen. Chayiv b'achriyusai, the ganav is chayiv. Lo yadu bailim, lo b'gnei vasai, v'lo b'gnei chazarasai. Says the Gemara, if the Mishnah, if the owner didn't know about the stealing nor about the returning, umanu as a sign, shlema, and he counted and he realized that it was there, he then potter. So again, case number 1, seemingly the owner knew it was stolen, he just didn't know it was returned. Case number 2 is the owner didn't know it was stolen, nor that it was returned. Then we say he's pater. Says the Gemara, we're going to bring down a 4-way machlokes amoraim, and as we'll see, each shita is going to have a different explanation of the Gemara. So Amar Mar, we begin with the Amar Rav, We're going to move on to Shmuel. We're going to continue with Rav Yochanan, and finally we're going to have Rav Chisda, just to map it out. So let's get there. Says the Gemara on the bottom of Kuf Yud Ches Amar Aleph. Omar Rav, Ladas, if something was stolen with the owner knowing about it, Tzarech Das, then it needs knowledge to return it as well. Shaloi Ladas, if Shaloi Ladas, it was stolen without the owner knowing about it, Minyan Pater, then if the owner accounts it, that's enough. When he counts it, he sees that that item is there, then the ganav is pater. When the Mishnah said Umano was a son v'shlema, is going on the seifa. Rav being a very simple way of learning the seifa. Ushmuel Amar says Shmuel no. Bein ladas, bein shaloi ladas, minyan pater. Whether the owner knew about it or not, if he counts it and he finds animals there, he's pater. V'chikatani umanu v'shlema pater. Arkula is going on the whole Mishnah. Rav Yochanan Amar Ladas, if he knows about it, then minyan pater ladas avilu minyan amiloi. Tzarich. You don't even need to count it. If you didn't know it was stolen and you put it back, what do you need to count it for? And Rav Chisda Amar Ladas, if he knows about a minyan pater, Shay Ladas, then Sarich Das. If he stole it without him being known about it, then you have to tell him when he returns it. When the Mishnah said, Umanu Asavi Shlema is a Reisha. So 4 different ways of learning, which will result in 4 different explanations of the Mishnah. Amar Rava begins by delving a drop deeper into my time with the Rav Chisda. As we turn over to Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis, asks the Gemara, where did Rav Chisda get this din from? Haya explains the Gemara, Hayal v'ankita nigri biraisa. Rav Chisda got this din that since the animal was, saw the free light, now the owner needs to know about it. Because once an animal left, the animal is more prone to being wild, to stepping out of line. And therefore, if someone steals it, shlo ladas, he needs to tell the owner about it so he can watch it better. Ask the Gemara, does Rava really explain as such? But Rava says, says Rava, if someone sees his friend lifting up Imra me'edra didei, a sheep from his flock, and he wants to steal it, and he screams v'shadiyeh, and the ganav drops the sheep, and the owner didn't know whether the animal came back or not. He didn't know if the person dropped it. He just screamed. Then the ganav is chayiv. My love, aval gav de money. Sounds like even though the owner counted it and he knows it's there, seemingly the ganav is still chayiv. Says the Gemara, no kasha, loy deloy money. Ask the Gemara now, back on opinion number 1. Umi Amar Rav Achi. The Rav say is in again. Rav said that is going on the seifa. To return it to the flock in the midbar is enough. Rav admit if it's a spotted animal, then you don't have to do anything. Why? Because then it's purely apparent to the owner that it is back. Says the Gemara, Lema Kitanoi. Let's say we just quoted 4 opinions in the bottom of Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph. We had Rav Yochanan, Rav Chisda, and Shmuel. Ask the Gemara, let's suggest that this 4 machlokes is machlokes Tanoim. Ha'goynev telem in eider v'selim in akis. L'makim shegonav yachzer to Rav Yishmael. Rav Kiva Sarach Das Bailam. Rav Kiva says you need a Das Bailam. So explains the Gemara, what is this machlokes Rav Kiva and Rav Yishmael? Savrua, they thought at first Kuliyam Islud Rav Yitzchak. Everyone knows of Rav Yitzchak. What's Rav Yitzchak? Dama Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak teaches Adam Asay L'Masheish Bekisai bekol shah. A refrain that we'll see again in Gemara Bamidsiya, but says Rav Yitzchak that one touches and ensures always that his wallet is in his pocket. So my love, Adam asay l'mashish bekisa b'cholsha. So my love is das ublukta deravu shmol. So says the Gemara, if Adam asay mashish kolsa, so what are we talking about? That it's a metasela, that the owner knew that it was stolen, and seemingly the machlekes of Yishmael and Rav Akiva is going to be the same machlekes as Rav and Shmuel. Says the Gemara, loy batla bitleh shaloi ledas. Look to Rav Yochanan. So we thought it was one machlekes. Says the Gemara, no, it's a different machlekes. Amar Rav Zvid, and on the second potential machlekes that this machlekes Rav Yishol Rav Akiva is Rav Chizar Rav Yochanan. Amar Rav Zvid on the third by line Meshei Derava beShaimer Sheiganav Mershusabaylam Kulyam Lo Yipligi Kedir Rav Chista V'Hacha B'Shem Sheiganav Mershusai. It's a different machlekes, says the Gemara of Kivas ever kal salai shmi rasa shmuel savrloi kal salai shmi rasa. In a case in which a shaymer sheganav mershusai, you have to return it to the makom sheganav, which Rav Akiva says kal salai shmi rasa, and therefore you have to tell the owner about what happened. And therefore, if the Shomer knows about it, that will suffice. Says the Gemara, what was the detail in the Mishnah that was repeatedly debated? This detail of minyan, this detail of the owner counting the sheep, at what level that ends the story, and therefore patters up the ganif. So says the Gemara, Lema, minyan poiter tanai, whether counting exempts the ganav is a machlekes tanaim. 6 lines into the very wide lines of Kuv Yechesem Beis. The Tanya, Hagoyz as chaver v'viloi b'cheshvayin. Someone steals from his friend, and then later on he has to pay him back for another reason, and he stuffs that money in. He's mavliya, he swallows it, he pays back without the owner knowing. There's a machlekes of prices whether this kind of is yoytz is chiyah v'yishava, whether it's considered like you returned the item. Suggests the Gemara. Therefore, we see that the owner knows what was missing. Counting and exempts it, the owner certainly counted it, and therefore he's potter. So suggest the machlekes, this machlekes of braisos is our machlekes. Answers the Gemara Amri. You're right. If we were to hold Rav Yitzchak that counting that you always know your item is missing, then everyone would agree that Midian Potters, Rav Yitzchak Kamifli, these braisos are arguing within the din of Rav Yitzchak. Maris later Rav Yitzchak, Mar less later Rav Yitzchak. Teretz number one, Viva said to come is still Rav Yitzchak. Lokasha adamani vrama v'kisi adamana v'rama liyadei. Says the Gemara, a second differentiation could be Hadamana, the first price referring to where he counted the money, put it back into the wallet of the one he stole from. The money v'rama and he put it into his hand so he knew about it. Viva saying a third shot. And of course, I'll determine whether he'll know that the item was stolen and returned or not. Continues the Mishnah towards halfway down of Kuv Yechesem Beis, the wide lines. One should not buy minarayim from shepherds. What should they not buy? Tzemer, wool, v'chala, milk, ugidiyim, or young goats. Neither should you buy from one who's guarding peiros, eitzim peiros. Aval loicha min anoshim, you can buy from a woman, kleit semer, woolen items. Where be Yehuda? Klei pishtam begalil, va'agolim b'sharoin, and agolim in wagons in sharoin. Kulan sha'amru la'atmin asav loicha beitziv d'argolim b'chol makim. In any of these cases, if the woman, when selling the item, says, quickly hide it, you got to be careful. Then you're not allowed to. But in all stories, one is allowed to purchase beitzim v'tarne goyim. So says the Gemara, what exactly is going on over here that you can't buy certain items from a shepherd, etc.? Tanu Rabbanan. Ein loiched min arayim. Not to buy from a shepherd, lo yizim, lo gedim, lo gizim, lo tzlushim, nor shearings. Shal tamer, avleicham, and tfurim. You're allowed to buy a sewn item. They change shalan because that belongs to the shepherd. V'leichem em chalav gvina midbar. In the midbar you can buy milk and cheese. Lo yishav. V'leichem em dalad v'heitzayin v'dalad v'heigizim. Avlo shteitzay, not two sheep at a time. Lo shtei gizim, and not two sharings of the fleece. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer says, Rabbi Yehuda, Bayasaz lochamem midbariyos ein loichamem. You're allowed to buy domestic sheep, but not midbariyos, which are sheep that roam in the forest, in the open fields, etc. Klal shadavar. Kol sha'aroya moich. Ubalabayis a margish boy. Then like a man. If the balabayis is going to notice, then you don't have to be concerned, because certainly the Araya is not going to steal, because you'll be able to tell. Ain margish ban, but anything that the Baalbayis will not know about, ain loichlem, you're not allowed to purchase from a shomer. Amar mar loichlem dalad soim dalad gizim hashli ish lamar but zvinin zavdinon chamishami buy the classical kasha. If you can buy 4, then of course you can buy 5. Amar Rav Chisda arba mitu chamisha terstam bon because the Amar Rav Chisda arba meider katan cheshider kavdol. Says the Gemara, this itself is contradictory. Agufa kasha. Amr dalavei soin dalavei giz dalavei avul shalish loy. Ema seif avul loy shteit soin. What's the obvious implication? Hashalish, yes, amnin. Like kasha bebraisa. Habi kachishta, says the Gemara. The end of the braisa, which allows you to buy even 3, refers to the healthy sheep. First order of the braisa, which allows you to purchase 4 or 5. It's talking about kichishusa. So about more frail sheep, because they're not such high value, the owner doesn't pay as much attention to them, and therefore you have to purchase them. Therefore, you're allowed to purchase them even in a larger number. Says the Gemara of Yehuda Aimer, Ibayalu, says the Gemara. I will end with this Shaila. Ibayalu, Rav Yehuda, Aresha Kai Ulachomra. What's the shaila? Articulates the Gemara as always. Allowed to buy 4 or 5 sheep. And on there it says Rav Yehuda that's only domestic sheep. If it's going to the sefer lekula, damer. Avaloy states so no buy 2 sheep, v'lo shtei gizim. And on that, Rabbi Yehuda says, so which part of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda modifying when he says Bayasas loichen, but midbariyos ain't loichen? Tashema, says the Gemara, the Tani Yudam loichen Bayasas mehen, vein loichen midbariyos. B'chol makim loichen arba v'chamisha, so you always had to buy 4 or 5. So we turn over to Kuf Yutaz Amid Aleph, and the Gemara concludes, Mid'amar b'chol makim shamina, Asefa kai ulekula shema mina. The Tab Rashi said that come b'chol makim loichen arba v'chamisha alma. What do we see? Hay dekam miflik bin bayasas lemidbariyos. Ashteitza in balik ulekula kai reviewed is going lekula. Pick it up from Shemei Prayers the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.